So look at the first structure. If you want to create JSON string, or if you want to parse a JSON, what are the classes we have? JSON class, JSON generator class, JSON parser class. If you want to generate JSON, we have used JSON class, JSON parser class, JSON generator class. Similarly, in the Salesforce, if you want to create XML document or you want to parse the XML file, we have document class, XML node class. What are the classes we have? DOM and a document and XML node. So we have some predefined classes which are used to create or parse the XML. Now first try to understand the basics of this XML. I think in the last session they gave you the materials also. Now, let us understand what was this XML and how we are going to use it. Let me open the basics. Now, so XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. It is also one of the format in which we can exchange the data. XML is also one of the format in which we can exchange the data between two systems. So JSON is one of the format of exchanging the data. Similarly, XML is also one of the format to exchange the data across the network. I repeat, JSON is one of the format to exchange the data across the network. Similarly, XML is also one of the format for exchanging the data across the network. So XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. Right? It is almost similar to HTML tags. The way you are using a HTML tag, in the similar way we use it. It is basically designed for describing the data. It doesn't have any format. It is a self-describing. It is a self-describing. It is a platform independent. It is a language independent. It is a platform independent. It is a language independent. Previously, the XML used to use DTD format for defining the meaning of the data. Now, if you are sending the data, I want to know what type of data it is. Now, when you send a data, is it a string? Is it a number? Is it an integer? Is it a decimal? What type of data is this? Let me give you a quick example. I was giving some data like this. Now I was giving like this. Now, when you are sending the data like this, everything is mentioned like a string. When I was receiving the data, I have to tell whether the data what I received is in the correct format or not. You received this type of data. Now you told age, is it an integer? I received a salary, is it an integer or a decimal or a string? Now I have to tell, you're only giving the data. Now I need a validation to verify whether the data what I received is right or wrong. Now what is the format of this? Now, is it a parent or a child? Is the structure what I give, is it valid? Is it only the format in which you are expecting the data? So, you are getting the data, but the structure of the data we have to know. A simple example, now I have taken now somebody is giving a data like this. Now like this I got. Now, how do you know what is it? I created a public class employee public string when I give this, then they say, is the data what you sent is exactly the same format of what I'm expecting or not? You are supposed to send the employee data as a name, age, city, company. If I was giving something like this, now it is not a valid format. Now if I'm giving something like this, now it is not a valid format. Why are you saying it is not a valid format? Because in the definition you told age is an integer. In the definition you told age is an integer. Now when you give a data, now what the data you have given, is it a valid format or not? I will check it. Right? Are you getting my point? So here we are using a class, name of the class, data types, variables. Using these, we are verifying whether the data is in the right format or not, whether we are getting the data in the right format or not. Am I right or no? Am I right? Okay. Similarly, for XML, how do you know? Now, if it is a Apex class, you take a wrapper class and verify. Or else, if it is if you are saying employee, then you say, when you say employee, emp.name Satish. Now, how the data should be? Go to employee class, find out what is name is the string. Go to emp.age, So, go to employee class, find out what is age, is it integer. Then I will verify the data what you are giving, is it according to my requirement or not. Am I right, boss? Now, similarly, how do you do this in the XML? How do you do this in the XML? In the XML, if you want to do, verify whether the data what you entered is, in the right format or not, then we need to define, the definition. What was that? DTD. What was this? DTD. This is the old pattern. Now today pattern is schema. What was this DTD? Document type definition. Whatever the document you are giving, what type of document it should be? What is the structure of the document? What are the elements you are expecting in the document? What type of elements you are expecting in the document? This will be given. So what was this? Now look at this. This is your data. Note to, from, heading, body. Right. Now, how this structure? Note is a parent element. To is a child element. From is a child element. Now this is defined with the DTD. Now DTD is saying, what is the DTD? Element. Note. It is a root element. It is a parent element. What are the child elements it has got? To, from, heading, body. Now, node is a parent. These are the childs. Now, to is of what format? PC data. From is of what format? PC data. Heading is of what format? PC data. Now, parent, child, and each child is of what type? It's just like I told you. Element employee with the name, city, phone number, age. Now, name is of what type? City is of what type? Age is of what type? We are defining the structure separately. Right. This is the format of defining a data. But the problem here is there are only two types of elements. In the DTD, there are only two types of elements. What are they? The data types. you don't have the flexibility to define what are the data types you want. You don't have the flexibility to define what type of element you want. You have only PC data. Right. Here, you don't have the choice to define different data types. You don't have a data types as per your requirement. So what happened? Next to this DTD, people have introduced schema. Next to this, the people have introduced what? Schema. Next level of DTD definition. Today, what we are using is schema definition. Today, what we are using is schema definition. Today, what we are using is schema definition. Now, what is the schema? Boss, in the DTD, we have a limited number of data types. We are unable to specify the validations properly. We are unable to specify the ranges properly. So we don't have validations. We don't have, okay, we don't have proper validations. We don't have ranges. We cannot define whether it's required or not. So there's a limitations on it. So the schema is an extension of DTD, which will define type of XML document. When you receive the data in the form of XML, it is going to specify what is the structure of that XML document, what type of element we are expecting, what type of data we are expecting, data what you give, is it valid or not. All those things are verified by the okay. What is that? Schema. What is that called? XML schema. XML schema, which is generally called as XSD. Okay, XML schema definition. Now look at this format. If you are looking at this, what it is saying, boss? Element, node. Now what type of elements are there? To, string. From, string. Heading, string. Body, string. What are you going to get here? You are going to get name of the element, type of the element. If you want to give a ranges, you can give a ranges. If it is a mandatory, required field or not, or if you are expecting the data in a particular format, you can also give the pattern. Now, what is the advantage of this schema? The schema is, it will give the better structure of the data because it has more number of data types. And it has more number of data types, it has validations, it has ranges, it can specify the meaning of the data in better way. So finally, the schema, right? Finally, the schema last. Right. Finally, the schema will tell you the definition of your data. Schema will tell you the definition of the data, structure of your data. The schema will tell you in which format the data should be defined, what is the data type of the data, what are the validations of the data, what are the ranges of the data. Everything is defined in the schema definition. The same thing was done in DTD, but there we have only 2 data types. So we don't have a much choice to define it in the well-defined format. Because I have given only 2 choices, you have to use only those 2 data types. But here, everything was given clearly with more number of data types. Now, when you say XML schema, there will be 2 things. How are you going to give it? XML version 1.0. Then we have XML schema. We have the XML schema with namespace. What was this namespace? Look at the point. We are defining XML namespace. Look at the structure, boss, everyone. You have done a Visual Force programming till now. Apex page. Why are you giving this Apex page? Why are you giving this Apex page? Now, why are you giving this Apex page? Page is an element, right? But why are you giving that Apex page? What is the meaning of that Apex page? Why are you giving that Apex? Probably in the beginning class of Visual Force we have discussed. Page is the element, Visual Force element. Okay, predefined tag. Apex is the namespace. Apex is the namespace. Namespace will tell you where the meaning of page was given. You are using page. Where is the definition of this page? What this page is going to do? What is the meaning of the page? What the page is going to do is specified in the namespace called apex. Now generally we have to define like this. Some information I am giving. XML namespace equal to this is how I have to. Now, if I want to define the name, the meaning of name is defined in my own colon. Like this I have to. So the meaning of the name is defined here. The meaning of the name is defined here. So every time I cannot use the structure like this. Every time I cannot define meaning of this. I cannot define a website where to find the meaning of the name, where to find the meaning of the age. So what happened? There is a reason what they are doing, boss. As I cannot do it, they are saying XML namespace. XML namespace. The namespace is this one. So they want to give prefix for this. So I want to replace this with a prefix. That's how we are given here. What was that? Look at the point. Okay. So instead of defining the entire URL here, we want to give a shortcut notation. We want to give a shortcut notation. What is the shortcut notation? Instead of referring this entire URL, instead of referring to this entire URL, I want to give a shortcut notation. Generally, if you look at any XML file, you look at sample XML file. Look at this. What was this? Schema. The definitions are defined here. Now XML namespace colon XSD. What was this XSD? Instead of referring to this entire URL, refer with XSD. I am finding very difficult to define this URL. Generally, what should I do? HTTPS w3.org 2001 XML schema colon element. People are with question mark. Let me define it. Look at this, everyone. Apex, page, XML namespace, the first definition we are taking today. The first definition, XML schema. XML namespace, Satish equal to now on, what I am going to do, boss, instead of referring to satishmyla.in, I will refer as Satish. So what does it mean? Just like the previous example what I give. Generally what I was supposed to give, ma? Generally what I was supposed to give? Why you are supposed to give? Boss, there is a meaning called name. When you say name, where is the definition of that name is given? Is it a string? Is it an integer? Is it expecting a length of 80 characters? Is it expecting a length of 4 characters? Is it accepting alphanumerical data? Is it accepting only alphabets? Is it accepting only numbers? Now I have to know the meaning, right? When you say name, what is the meaning of name? What is the meaning of name? Is it a string? Is it an integer? Is it a decimal? If it is expecting a name, how many characters it is expecting? What type of data it is expecting? How will you know it? Now simply you are using integer. When you say integer is, it is automatically understand it is accepting a numerical data without decimal point. So somebody has defined the meaning of integer. Somebody has defined meaning of integer. Boss, integer means numerical value which will not contain decimal. Okay, it can take a data of 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. Right? The definitions are already given. That is the reason I was able to use integer age. Similarly, when you are giving name, what do you mean by name? Now, I have two structures here. Look at the point. Employee data. Now I have a student. Now, in this one, they want to take 30 characters maximum. In this one, they want to take 80 characters maximum. Now, definition has changed. In both the locations, I have used a element called name. But the definition of the name in the employees is a alpha data, alphabets, maximum of 30 characters. In the second one, it is an alphabet, maximum of 80 characters. The meaning has changed. Then when you are using an element called name, what is the meaning of this element called name? What is the data type? What is the length? What are the validation? And what is the other format? To define this, we are going with what? XML namespace. We are going with XML. Generally, it is going to be website. Now what I'm going to give? Boss, if you want to know the meaning of that name, go to satishmyla.in, find out the meaning of name and use it. But every time I cannot use this satishmyla.in. There is a reason I gave a XML namespace. What is the prefix I have? Satish. Instead of using this satishmyla.in, I was using Satish. So when I say Satish, it is www.satishmyla.in. From there, find out the definition of name and use it. I hope you are good with this. Right? Similarly, come back to your Visual Force now. In the Visual Force page, you are giving Apex page. Now tell me, what is this Apex page? That Apex is a prefix referring to one namespace. If you want to know the meaning of page, go to that namespace, find out what is the meaning of that. When you say page is getting created. When you say Apex section header, we are getting a section header. Who told it has to create a section header? Who told it has to create one image, one title, subtitle, description? Who told? The XML namespace. Now the section header. If you go to the namespace, there the meaning of section header is given. There they define the definition of a section header. What will be printed as an image? What will be printed as a title? What will be printed as a subtitle? Are you getting my point? So what is the Apex? Prefix referring to one namespace. What is the element? Section header. Now what format of definition is this? It is a XML schema. So your entire Visual Force pages are defined using XML schema. XML schema. I hope you got my point, right? Are you clear about it? Right, Amma? Is not working? Right. So, XML schema. Right. Go back. Come back to the format. So we are giving a XML schema. Now look at this XML namespace XS. So what is that? Instead of defining w3.org, we are using XS. So wherever I say XS, it is referring to w3.org. Right, Amma? So I'm saying whatever the elements I'm using, these definitions are available in the particular location. How many namespaces we can use? Multiple number of namespaces we can import. I can import multiple number of namespaces. Now I can give an example like this. This is one namespace. I give capital. Now, how many namespaces we are including? Multiple namespaces. We can include multiple namespaces. So here I can give capital parent. Wherever I use Satish, take the data from Satish Myla. Wherever I say capital, take the data from capinfo. Right? So we can have multiple namespaces in the schema. Target namespace. When is a target namespace? Now, when is a target namespace? Element where the definitions, where the elements are defined. Target namespace is the location where elements are defined in the schema. Now, we are saying capital is a namespace. What is this parent? Parent is a element. City is a element. Now, when you say target namespace, where the elements are defined, where the schema elements are defined, that is called target namespace. Namespace where the definition is defined. Now, target namespace where the schema structure is defined. Are you getting my point here? So, look at this example. We are using, I'll give a quick example here. Look at the point. Here we have w3.org. When you say w3.org, it will tell you how to form the schema. If you want to define anything in the schema, people with the question marks, right? Look at the point. Integer age, or else we have a apex classes class. Now, where the definition of class is given, that is your XML namespace. Now, finally, you are going to create a class. I took a class example.apx. Here I am writing public class example. Right? Where are you using? You gave a definition of class. What is a class? What class will contain? Right? What is the syntax of a class? What should be there in the class? Right? All the properties of the class you define. Now, you are defining a class here. Now, this is the element. This is your class. Using the definition of this class, you are building your own class here. Now, this is what? XML namespace. This is what? Example.apex is target. Where is the define? Okay, definition defined. Using the definition, where are you defining the schema? Are you getting? Where is the definition given? Is the namespace. Using the definition, where are you forming your structure? That is your target namespace. I hope you got my point. I hope you got my point. So your documentation is defined somewhere. With the help of the documentation, we are creating our own example. The example what you created, where you created, is your target namespace. I hope you got my point. Am I clear? Okay. So let me make it clear in the down the line with a different example. Now look at this point. This is only for the sake of understanding our XML. What is this XML element? Elements are classified into two types of. One is simple element, another one is complex type. Simple element means element without attributes, element without child elements is called simple element. If it has any attributes, complex. If it has any child, complex. Element without attributes, element without child elements is called simple element. Let me give you. Last name. Does it have any attribute? What do you mean by attribute? Apex, page. Then we have standard controller. Now, is it a simple type or complex type? Complex type. Why? It has an attribute called standard controller. Right. Then we have Apex input text value. It is what? Complex type. It is a complex type. Now it is simple type. It is complex type. It is, what is it? Name is a complex type. Name is a complex type. Last name is a, are you getting? So any element which has attributes, it is a complex. Any element which has a child, it is a complex. Any element without attributes or childs is a simple. Are you clear? Okay. Now how do you define the element? You have to define the element, right? So how do you define the element? XSD or XS. Element. Name. Last name. Type. String. You are using it. Now, what is the meaning of this element? What is the meaning of this element? It is defined in the prefix called XS. What is that XS? It is referring to one namespace. Now, the definition of the element is given in the namespace. Okay, using this element, we are forming our own schema. Now, element is not schema. Using this element, we are forming a schema. Are you getting my point here? Are you getting? Using the properties defined in the namespace, we are trying to create our own schema. Using the properties of elements given in the namespace, we are trying to create our own schema, where the name of the file where your schema is defined is a target namespace. Okay, using what you are trying to form your schema, that is your namespace. Using which elements you are trying to form the schema is namespace. Right. Now using that elements, we are trying to form our own schema. That location is your target namespace. Are you getting my point? Are you getting my point? Clear for everyone? Clear for everyone? Right? Okay. Now, what are the elements we have? Last name. Is it single? Okay, simple or complex? Simple. 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 How you define access element? What is this access? The access is a namespace given on the top. What we give? Access element, name equal to last name, type equal to string. Name equal to age, type equal to integer. We don't require much begin, just to have a rough idea so that you understand the visual files easily. That's the reason just we are discussing. This is not a part of our structure basically. Just to understand visual file better, we're just trying to have a quick idea about the schema. So this is not part of our Apex programming. Just to have a quick understanding. If you look at any file in general outside the Salesforce also, if you want to understand what it is, we need to have some basics of schema. That's the only reason why we are trying to touch this topic. Now what was this? Now element, name, color, type, string, default value. The value you cannot be multi. Now this is what? This is called element. What are the complex elements we have? So when you want to say complex element, no, complex type. Elements that contain other elements, elements that contain only text, contain both elements and text. Okay, look at the point. Now when you look at this, employee has first name, last name. Employee has first name, last name. So what was this? It is a complex. Now food, type, dessert, ice cream. Now what was this? Now we had element, food, type, dessert. Now what is that? We have an attribute for this. We have attribute. It is an attribute. So it is a complex. Description, it is a complex. Date, it is a complex. Are you clear about it? If it has a child element, or if it is a element referring to another element, or it has an attribute, we call it as complex. Okay. Now there are some concepts here. Look at the point. What was this? Element, person. If you have any child elements, we have to say complex type. Sequence means I require the data in the same order. First name followed by last name. Now what was this? Name is a complex type which has two child elements, first name and last name. Now here we have name. Okay, name. Person is a complex. Person is a complex. First name and last name. Now what are you doing here? This is a schema defined with the name called person. Now here we are defining the type equal to person type. So we are not using the predefined data types. We are using the schema of. We are using one schema as the data type of another schema. We are trying to use one schema as the definition of another schema. Okay. So all these are called XSD. So basically, what we want to convey is the XML schema is basically used to specify what is the format of the data you are expecting. You are expecting the data in which format. What type of data type you are expecting? What is the default value you are expecting? Is it a mandatory or not? Is it a mandatory or not? In which sequence you are expecting? Do you have any validation rules? Do you have any other restrictions on it? Applying the restrictions on data, defining the type of data. All this is defined using the schema. All these are defined using schema. All these are defined using schema. Are you getting my point? What is the purpose of the schema? Schema will tell what format of data you are expecting, what is the validations on the data, what are the restrictions on the data, okay, what is the data type of the data. All these definitions are given in the schema. The schema is like your class. The schema is like your class. Schema is like your table in the administration. In the administration, what are you trying to create? Object fields. When you create an object in fields, every time I am trying to create a record, the fields are visible to you. We are entering. But at the time of creating an object, you are saying name is a text, phone is a phone number, email is a email, date of birth is a date, okay, address is a text area. Are you getting? At the administration, what you have done? Created a table, told what are the fields we need, what is the data type of a field, is it a required field or not, is it a validation rules are there or not, everything you define. Then we are entering the data in the record table. While entering the data, what it will do? Go to the object definition, go to the field definition, verify whether it's required or not. Required, but you're not entering the data, throw error. You are saying it's a number, you're giving a string, throw error. You told it's a date, you are giving, okay, string, throw error message. How it is verifying? Because the backend schema is defined. Backend schema is defined. Backend schema is defined. Are you getting? Your object definition is what? Schema. Object name, field name, data type, properties, validation, required or not, external ID or not, duplicate or not, default value or there, okay, any default value. All these are what? Schema definition. While you are entering the data into the table, when you enter the data, they check, is this data is matching with your schema. You told name is required, but you are not entering, throw error. You told age is an integer, but you are giving a date value, throw error. You told, okay, date of birth, okay, close date cannot be more than today, but you are giving, okay, tomorrow's date, throw error. Who is verifying is it valid or not? Schema. So schema defines structure of your data, format of the data you are expecting, validations, data types, restriction, everything they define. Based on that, I have to enter my data. I hope you got the example right. Everyone has got the example? Got it, Amma? Everyone got the example? Clear? Followed or not? Sure? Pakka? Followed? Right. So, previously, what is the format we used to do? DTD. Previously, what is the format? DTD. But now, enhancement. Now, it is enhanced format is what? Your? Right. Let us move on to the next one. The basic purpose of understanding why I had so much discussion on this point, because at the time of creating a XML in the Salesforce, there are two attributes called namespace and prefix. To understand those two attributes, we have just had this discussion. Now, when you are trying to define XML, there are some rules what we are supposed to follow. Now tell me, what are the rules you follow while creating a Visual Force page? Every opening element should have closing element. This is the first rule. Every opening element should have closing element. There is reason whenever I open Apex page, close Apex page block. Am I right or not? Right, every opening element should have corresponding closing element. What is the second rule we follow? Inner elements should be closed first. Inner element should be closed first. How are you closing it? Apex page, Apex form. Page block. Page block section. Page block. So what did I do in this case? Inner element should be closed first, followed by outer elements. Inner element should be closed first, followed by inner element should be open the door. Door open. Inner element should be closed first, followed by outer elements. Now page block section closed first, followed by page block, followed by form, followed by page. Okay. Next, opening and closing elements are case sensitive. Now you open with capital N, close with capital N. Open with small n, close with opening elements and closing elements are case sensitive. How you define your opening element is your choice. There is no restriction how you want to give. There is no restriction how you want to give. But if opening element is capital name, closing also should be capital name. Just like your Visual Force page. Now, opening and closing should be close sensitive. Right? So this is the quick rules of creating a Visual Force. Okay, the same thing we are applied here. What was that? What was this element? XML elements must be properly nested. If I open BI, closing should be IB. Inner element should be closed first, followed by outer elements. Then XML tags are case sensitive. If I give capital N, closing also should be with capital M. Then, what was that? Every opening element should have corresponding closing element. Now, XML will follow what structure? Tree structure. What is that? Root, child, subchild, grand chain. Are you getting my point? It's a tree structure. Now, we are going to give root element, child element, subchild, grand chain. Now, it's going to be like a tree structure. Right? The first element is called root, the child, subchild, and so on. I hope you are good with this example basically. Right. Now, come back to our basic Salesforce programming. Now, how you are going to define XML file in the Salesforce? XML file in the Salesforce is defined by using DOM namespace. JSON is created with the help of system namespace. If you want to define a JSON, what is the namespace you have taken? System. Under the namespace of system, we have a JSON class, JSON parser class, JSON generator, JSON token. This type of data is available. Similarly, if you want to work with XML, now the namespace what we have is a DOM, DOM, document object model. So everything is represented in the form of object, document object model, where this has got two predefined classes. What are they? Document class, XML node class. Now there we got JSON, JSON parser, generator. Here we have document, XML node. What are the classes we have? Document class and XML node class. Now we need to understand the methods what we have in the document class. What are the methods we have in the DOM.document? The first method what we have is create root element. Every XML file will start with what? Root element. Create root element. Once you have done the create root element, what is the next one we got? Get root element. Load XML file to XML file. So what are the methods we have in the DOM.document? Create root element, get root element, load element to XML. These are the methods what we have. When you want to create a root element, what are the parameters we have? Name of the element, namespace. This is the reason why we discussed the schema and DT. Namespace and prefix. Namespace and prefix. So are you getting my point here? Okay. Now one more. What is the one more class here? XML node. XML node is the element. How to create a child element? How to add a comments? How to add a text? Then all these are the predefined properties. How to set the attributes? How to set the namespace? How to set the prefix? We have some predefined methods. So let us look into one by one example to get the better understanding. So finally, what is the class in the Salesforce? DOM.document class, DOM.xml node class. Using these two classes, we will try to create XML string or parse XML string. Salesforce has given some predefined Apex classes to parse the XML or serialize the XML. What are those two predefined classes? One is DOM.document, another one is DOM.xml. Is that was clear for everyone? First one we are trying to take public string, DOC equal to then first one DOM.xml node root equal to create root element. The root element I am saying employee null. I don't have any namespace or prefix. Then XML string equal to doc.to XML string. Now what we used to do, if it is a JSON, okay, if it is a JSON, we used to say right. When you create a JSON object, what we have done? JS.get as string. The JSON object was converted into string. Similarly, doc.xml string. What this will do? This will convert XML object or DOM object into. We're just trying to create DOM.document, new DOM.document, create root element. Name of the element, namespace null, prefix. XML string. So what is the data we received here? Every XML will start with XML version 1.0 encoding. Every XML will start with the same line. Then what is the element we created? Employee is the element. Suppose if I was giving here, if you are creating here, look at the format. DOM.xml node root equal to create root element. When you say create root element, employee, so create the structure. Now I told namespace, prefix. Go back to the page. Look at this. Capital employee, XML namespace, Prefix is capital. So what is the URL? We give this the URL. So what was that? Capital colon employee. Previously we got only employee. Now we are getting capital colon employee. Capital is referring to the namespace of Satish Myla. In case if you want to give namespace and a prefix, we can give it. But I have taken the first example as null. In the first example, I have not given any namespace. We give null comma null. In case if you want to give, you can define like this. I hope you are good with this. People are good with this example. Everyone is good with this example. Right. Now, once you created the element, what I want? I want a child element to be created. Am I audible? Online people? Online, am,
Yes,
I audible?
Satish.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
So go back to the next. Here, I want to add a child element. DOM dot XML node. I have name. How do you create? Name should be child of what? Root dot add a child element. For the root, we are adding what? Child element. Add a child element to the root. So look at this. Employee. In the employee, we have a child element called name. We have an employee. In the employee, we have a child element called. Again, for the name, I want to add a child element. So what I will do? DOM dot XML node last name dot add element. Again, for the name I want to add a child element. DOM XML node first name. Now we received this. Go back here. Employee, last name, first name. Now we are only adding the element. We want to add the data also. We have given employee, child is name. For the name, child is last name and first name. If you want to add the data, you will say last name dot add fname dot add this is what I give. So go back. We're able to see employee, name, last name Myla, first name Satish. Close the name, close the employee. Are you getting this structure? Are you clear about the structure? Let us try one example from your end. Let us try one example from your end. I want to form this example. Now using XML create this output. Using XML create this output. I want this output by using XML. I want finally this output. Now the namespace You can take the namespace as www.salesforce.com. Or if you're feeling it's a complicated, here I can remove this. Create this structure. Create this output. Page block section. This is section 1. This is section 2. No namespace. Now I remove the apex. I don't want to give a namespace for rest of the elements. Build the program. What is the first line? If you want to build the program, what is the first line we need? DOM dot document then create a root element. Create a root element. Create a root element. So how do you create a root element? UOC dot create. Page salesforce.com/ this has created a root element. For the root element, create page block. For the root element, create a page block. XML node. Add child element. Page block. For the page block, add page block section. Then for the page block section, add the data. Page block section 1 dot add text node. Right. Repeat the same example. So this is how we are creating, right? Right, boss? Everyone has got the story.
EBS dot add text node. True. This is.
Now let me execute this. Now I have got the same program I was giving, but here now I want to look at the point. Now the same story I want to give. I'm giving here namespace everywhere. Look at this. Now element namespace prefix, element namespace prefix. Everywhere I was giving the prefixes there. Then XML string equal to dot. So go back to the have a preview. Now look at the output what we received here. Look at the output what we received. We found a Visual Force page code. We found a Visual Force code by using program. Using a program, I found a Visual Force page. Now, this is what actually happens when you make a deployments. This is what actually happens when you make any deployments or any story here. You'll make a deployment, right? When you make a deployments, this is what actually happens. This is how the XML file will be created. The XML file will be recreated in the production. When it recreated in the production, the page will be created. Are you getting my point? Your VF pages, what you are creating, this is how the programmatically we can create a VF page. From Eclipse, you are creating a VF page. Now, how it is sent? It is sent like XML file. Are you getting my point? So, whatever the program we are going to write in the Visual Force page, the same program I wrote here in the form of XML file. Is that was clear for everyone? People follow this. Basically, what is the story? Root element, add child element, add text. Root, child, text. Root, child, text. I hope you are good. Okay. Now, next example I want to take. Now I am going to write a SQL query, get the data, send this data to the third-party system in the form of Excel. I want to write a SQL query, get the data, send this data in the form of XML to the third-party system. So let us see how to fetch the data and how to send the data to third-party system. I hope everybody followed this example. Right? No queries, right? Everyone is good with this example. Followed, boss. Try to understand this concept here. Public. So here we had XML examples. First, how do you create element here? DOM dot now create root element. Create element. I told root dot add some ID. Convert into XML string. To XML string. Now go to look at the basic structure. Now have a preview. The basic first example. What we got? Element is name, body of the element is example, close of the name. Here I want to give some attributes. How are you going to give attributes here? Look at this. Root dot add, root dot set attribute, last name. Look at the parameters what we have. Once again I am taking the element here. What are the element you are taking? Root dot set attribute, name of the attribute comma value of the attribute. So I was taking the attribute last name, now you want to display the data like an attribute. Apex page, standard controller, okay, title, help, sidebar, show header, all of them are what? Attributes. I want to show the data like an attribute. So look at this. Name, last name, first name, example. Name, last name, first name, example. Are you clear with this? Right? What are you doing? Setting the attributes. Setting the attributes. Setting the attributes. I hope everyone is good with this example. Right. Let us try to form the example now. Listen carefully, ma. Then I wrote a list of account. Then I am forming DOM dot document. Right. Then we had DOM dot XML node root equal to create what is the root element? We have created a root element called accounts. Then take one by one account. How do you take one by one account? Account A. Then we are trying to create DOM XML node ACC equal to root dot add chain elements account Then we had ACC dot set attribute name ACC dot set attribute ACC dot set attribute Now what I'm doing, I took one by one element, created an element called account. For that account, name, industry, phone. Now root dot add child element. Then we told ACC dot set attribute. We are setting the attributes here. Right. So set attribute. It was mistake here, A, right? Then what I was supposed to do at the end, convert into XML string. So XML string equal to doc dot to XML. This is what I got. So go back, preview. This is the data what I received. What we received here. Account. This is what I received. Accounts, account, name, industry, phone, name, industry, phone. I hope everyone is good with this. I wrote a SQL query. I was fetching the data and I was putting the data in the form of XML and I was sending. Create a root element. For the root element, create a child element. Every account is a child element of root. Have you got the story here? Am I clear with this? Am I clear? Right? Look at the code. Anyone has any query on the code? Let me know. Look at the code. If anybody has any query on the code, let me know. Is that was clear? Okay. Now let me try next example. Now the next example what I need is write a SQL query, get the account with the list of contacts, send the data. Now how your data should be? Your data should be like this. Now the output what you are supposed to get. Now to get the output like this. Contact. Now account with the list of contacts. Now this is the format in which I want output. Now this is the format in which I want the output. Create this structure. Write a SQL query to get account data with the list of contacts. Write a SQL query to get account data with the list of contacts. Generate the output in this format using XML. Write a SQL query to get account with the list of contacts and create the output in this format. Create the XML output in this format. Create the XML output in this format.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You're defining the DOM, right? What is a DOM actually?
Okay, it is a namespace.
Oh, okay.
Let's see how you got system as a namespace. Okay, DOM is also namespace. But you're creating messaging, right? Messaging dot single email message.
Okay.
What is that messaging? Is a namespace, and a single email message is the class. System dot JSON. JSON is the class. System is a namespace. Okay. Now DOM is the namespace. Document is the class.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Everyone make an attempt of writing the code. Let me demonstrate that example. Now, so write a SQL query. Write a SQL query. First name from just taking 2 records. Then from the data DOM dot document DOM dot. Now here we had DOM dot XML node equal to doc dot create root element. Then keep taking the account elements. How do you take account A, account A accounts, account A accounts. So we are taking ACC equal to add a child element. Then we are giving ACC dot set attribute ACC dot industry. Then I was trying to take if A dot contacts dot size greater than 0, if the account has any contacts, or else I can put if that account has any contacts, then I was supposed to give DOM dot XML node contacts equal to acc dot add child element. Then take for contacts. Then we are going to give contacts dot add child element contact, then give contact dot set attribute last name c dot last name. First name, right? So what we are trying to do, first I created a root element. This will create root. This will create child element for the, it's just a concept of parent child. Parent child. If you understand the how to add a child, entire structure is same. Parent child. So we are going to get accounts name, some data we got. Then what is this one? Check if the account has any contacts. If any contacts are there, I was supposed to form accounts, account, contact. The contact I was giving this is what I have created. First, create an accounts, add a child element. Under this child element, skip the attributes, name and industry. If account has any contacts, create a child element called contacts. Under the contacts, create a list of contacts. Did you follow this? Create an accounts, create an account, create an account. For the account, you keep an attribute called name, industry. For this account, if you have any contacts, for this account, if you have any contacts, a dot contacts dot size is greater than 0. Then create a contacts as a child element. Under the contacts, you are going to create list of contacts. I hope you are good with this. Clear for everyone? Right. So, yes, Amma. Come again. Okay. One account will have a list of contacts. No, I have taken a list for taking one by one. Okay, I have taken a list for adding one by one. Then I have taken account. For account again we have a group of contacts. So I have taken. Fine. So what was this? ACC dot add child element. Then again we have here contacts dot add. And finally convert into XML string. One, we have a group of accounts where each account has a group of childs. So we had a loop within a loop. By this time, the people should be very good at logic writing. Only I have to give a concept. Now, take the story. So I was giving XML. Have a preview of this. We got the data. This is how we created. So we had accounts, am I right? Accounts. Under the accounts, we have an account, name, industry. If it has any contacts, we got a list of contacts, and we are trying to display the list of contacts. This is the structure. So we are going to convert the data in the form of XML string, and we are going to transfer this data. We formed XML string. This XML string, I will send it to third-party system. They will parse it, use the data in the way they want. I hope you are good with this. All this concept is about what? Root element, add a child element, add a text node, or set attribute. Root element, add a child, add a text node, add a attribute. Is that was clear, boss? Am I clear with this? Clear for everyone? So let us take some break and come back. We'll continue with, people are very eagerly waiting.